My name is Sarah Johnson. It's been a year since I got married, and while my husband and I do have our arguments, I believe we've been generally happy. We were fortunate to have a child, and I managed to give birth safely. When my husband learned of the birth, he hurried over and gazed at our baby, saying, "So, it's finally born. Kind of looks like a monkey, doesn't it?" That was his first reaction upon seeing our child. "Hey! That's a terrible thing to say." "What?" "Oh, yeah, I guess so," he replied, laughing. But it's not something you can just laugh off when someone says that about your child. "What a terrible dad." "Sorry, don't be mad. I'll work even harder now for our child." "So, when are you getting discharged?" "In about 5 days. After discharge, I'm planning to rest at my parents' house for about a month." "Got it. I'll work harder too, for the baby's sake. I might come home late from now on, but it's all for work, so bear with me." My husband seemed quite motivated by the birth of our child. Seeing him like that, I felt that everything would work out fine. I thought so. But, despite saying he had work, he never visited the baby even once before I was discharged. He must be really busy. It's tough handling everything alone, I thought, naively. I recovered well and was discharged earlier than planned. Thinking to surprise my husband, I returned home with our baby. But upon opening the door, I saw a pair of women's shoes I didn't recognize. And it was the middle of the day. A guest? But isn't he supposed to be busy with work? It was odd for a woman to visit a man living alone. Unless perhaps she was a sales agent or something. But then I heard my husband's and a woman's voices from inside. Listening closer, their conversation didn't seem work-related. "Hey, your wife might come back," said the woman. "Don't worry, she's still in the hospital. Even after discharge, she's going straight to her parents." "No need to worry," he assured her. "That's a relief. But how awful of you. Your wife just went through the pain of childbirth, and here you are, bringing another woman home for a good time. That's because it's you, Susan. I'm not interested in other women. But you used to sweet-talk her the same way. I've never felt this way about her. I truly love you, Susan. So, how about heading to bed?" "No way. It's still daytime. Wait until tonight. I know how a dog feels waiting for a treat." They both laughed. This was definitely cheating. What a situation. Here I was, having endured childbirth, while my husband was entertaining another woman at home. Moreover, since the birth, he hadn't once come to see the baby. He'd ignore my calls and texts, and when he finally read them, his cold reply was, "You know I'm busy, so don't contact me." I'd been patient, thinking he was working hard for the family and considering our child. Quietly, I left the house with my baby and returned to my parents. Tears streamed down my face on the way. I couldn't cry in front of my parents, knowing how much it would hurt them. So, for now, just for now, I allowed myself to cry as much as I needed. So, just for now. Just for this moment, I'm going to cry my heart out. I parked the car and looked out over the river, letting my tears flow unchecked, turning my anger towards my husband into tears. When did it all start? I wondered. More questions bubbled up, and I realized how much I didn't understand. Where had they met, and how did it come to this? Who was this woman? How long had I been deceived? While I was struggling with childbirth, my husband was betraying me, having a good time with another woman. No wonder he didn't come to visit. Normally, he would be rushing to see the baby after work. But if there's another woman, he'd go to her instead. It's almost laughable. What was I to him? No matter how much I thought about it, there were no signs of my husband's infidelity. There were nights he came home late, claiming overtime, but even when I was suffering from morning sickness or struggling with a large belly, he was always kind and caring. Yet, when did all this start? Looking at my child, peacefully breathing in sleep, oblivious to the world's miseries, I thought, I want to protect this child's happiness. But what echoed in my ears were the voices of my husband and that woman. Their happy conversation, his pleased voice, and her sultry tone. Conversations that seemed to mock me. Why did this happen? How could this happen? I just wanted to surprise him by coming home early from the hospital. I wish I never knew. If I hadn't known, things might still be peaceful. Maybe if I had remained ignorant, his affair would have ended, and he might have come back. Perhaps that would have been happier. But was that really the right thing? Pretending not to know, staying silent, is that happiness? The answer is no. This shouldn't be allowed. Even if I pretended not to see his affair, I would surely suffer, suspecting him every time he came home late or communicated with someone. I could foresee a future of pain, as if my heart was being torn apart. What should I do? I kept asking myself. The outside was gradually getting darker. I couldn't stay in the car crying forever. Not with a newborn baby to care for. Wiping my tears, I drove towards my parents' house. There, my parents were overjoyed at the arrival of their first grandchild and told me to rest. But I couldn't just rest. My husband, Steve, who betrayed me and our child, deserved to be brought down. Only then could I possibly grasp happiness. Inspired by the situation, I came up with a plan. After entrusting my child to my parents, I left their house. Once back at my own home, I waited endlessly for the lights to go out. I planned to make my move once the two of them shifted to the bedroom and turned off its lights. My husband, perhaps in a hurry after being put off earlier in the day, turned off the living room lights surprisingly early and moved to the bedroom. A few minutes after the bedroom lights were also turned off, I, clutching my smartphone, entered the house. Moving quietly, I reached the bedroom door and listened. I could hear my husband and the woman talking, and when their voices stopped, I knew it was time. I checked my phone's screen, burst open the door, and turned on the light. Pointing my phone at them, I took a photo. The two of them, naked in bed, looked at me in shock. The woman clung to my husband in surprise, while my husband, caught off guard, seemed not to recognize who I was. After a moment of stillness, he finally jumped out of bed. I captured his image on my phone and then returned to the living room. I could hear the woman's voice from the bedroom. "What was that? Who the heck? My wife! Why is your wife here? She should still be in the hospital. I don't know. This isn't a joke. We were just photographed like that. It's okay. I'll handle it." It seemed my husband managed to calm her down, and they dressed and came to the living room. I sat on the sofa, arms crossed, waiting for them. Seeing me, my husband's face twisted. "When did you get discharged?" "Today." "Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know you were getting out so soon." "I just didn't say." "Why the heck not?" "I wanted to surprise you. You've only seen our child once since birth, and you're always too busy to respond to my messages. I thought you'd want to see the baby, so I came back right after getting discharged." "Where's the kid?" "At my parents' house. I'm not going to wander around with a newborn at this hour." "So, you came back this afternoon?" "That's right. I wouldn't be discharged in the middle of the night. I found you having a great time with that woman. You really belittled me, didn't you? Saying I'm not a woman anymore, too focused on the baby to care about you, making you feel lonely. As if having the baby was a bad thing, even though you're the father." "You heard all that?" "Of course, I did. I come home to find a strange woman's shoes at the door. At first, I thought maybe she was a sales agent, but all I heard from inside was cozy chit-chat. The one who planned to surprise ended up being the surprised. You should have come in right away. Do you know how much courage it takes to walk into your husband's infidelity? Consider how a wife feels finding out she's been betrayed." But I bounced back pretty quickly, which is quite something, I must say. "If it was daytime, this misunderstanding could have been cleared up." "Misunderstanding? What kind of misunderstanding? I bet you were cozily sitting on the sofa." Seeing that and being told it's a misunderstanding, I'd only have doubts. Catching you in the act was much more effective. "What a woman!" "Well, compared to a husband who brings a woman home while his wife is in the hospital after childbirth, I think it's not that big a deal. More like, what an asshole." "So, who is this lady?" Well, I'd like to know her name first." "Right, Susan? How did you know that?" "I heard you during the day saying, Susan is the only one I love. So, I know her as Susan, but whether that's her real name, who knows?" "It doesn't matter what her name is." "Oh, but you know my real name, don't you? You could easily find out from your husband. You have information about me, but I have none about you. That's not fair, is it? My name is Susan Miller. That's my real name." "So, Susan Miller. And you two are having an affair, right?" "That's not true. We're just friends." That's right." We're just friends. Friends who cuddle naked in bed? That's some deep friendship, I remarked sarcastically. That's your misinterpretation. She felt unwell, so I just offered her the bed, he defended. You shouldn't lend out other people's beds, especially not your wife's bed. And to do so naked. Don't twist it. We're not in that kind of relationship. You prefer her over me, don't you? And yet, you still deny the affair at this point. Don't you feel sorry for her? We are really just friends. Oh, how nice. Both of you have your stories straight. But what I saw earlier doesn't exactly scream just friends, does it? We are friends. What's wrong with taking care of a sick woman? He seemed not to understand his own position. He kept insisting it was a misunderstanding and that they were just friends, eventually shouting in frustration. It seemed he was determined not to admit to the affair, no matter what. So, you won't admit it? Fine, I have my plans too. I said and made a call with a single word, come in. The front door opened, and my husband's parents walked in. Dad, Mom, why are you here? I asked your in-laws to wait outside, I explained. Why? I figured you'd just start yelling at me alone. It's better to have outsiders present to keep things calm. But why call my parents? Who else should I call? The police, even though nothing's happened yet? Or our neighbors? That would just be a nuisance. Your parents are the best choice. But still. Please take a look at this. I then showed my in-laws the photo I had taken on my phone. My mother-in-law turned her eyes away, but my father-in-law looked intently. After all, it was a picture of a naked woman. Steve. What are you doing? It's not like that, Mom. How can you say it's different? When Sarah told us you were cheating, I thought it was nonsense. But to see it's true. It's not cheating. We're just friends. Friends? Can you really accept being told it's not cheating if you were shown a photo like this? Well, I guess I'd have to. What nonsense are you spouting? I never thought you could be this foolish. But it's Sarah's fault. How is it her fault? Because she stopped paying attention to me after she got pregnant. You idiot. She's giving birth to your child, and you're saying such ridiculous things. Don't you realize how much she's been through? His mother scolded, and Steve shrank back, unable to continue his deceit any longer. So, who is this woman? How did you meet? On an app. App? A dating app, to be precise. You were actively looking for someone to cheat with? Indeed, it was clear. It's one thing if it was a coworker, but to deliberately search for someone on an app indicated a clear intent to cheat. So, when did this start? Pretty much right after we met. When did you meet? Well, it's an app, so pretty early on. And you, Susan? You knew he was married? Well. You knew, right? Because he told you I was in the hospital. What a situation. My wife is in the hospital, so now's my chance. I was lonely. A lonely person who doesn't even visit. How does that make sense? Exactly. If you're lonely, you should visit your child. Unbelievable, especially when the baby was just born. His mother vented her anger, but Susan seemed indifferent, nonchalantly examining her nails. As if it had nothing to do with her. Hey! You've been silent like this doesn't concern you. What do you think about all this? Are you seriously into Steve? I'm indifferent. Why would I get serious with someone I met on an app? He said he was free while his wife was in the hospital, so we just had fun. Who seriously dates a married man? So you're saying this was all just a game? That's right. I was invited, so we played around. It's not uncommon. That's ridiculous. Could you delete that photo, please? It's an invasion of my privacy. It's evidence of infidelity. Why would I delete it? If you're worried about privacy, you shouldn't have done this in the first place. This is why I can't deal with rigid people. No, I'm serious. What? You're married, Steve. Even if you're married, you can still fall in love with someone else. Meeting Susan, I realize this is true love. This is what real love feels like. How foolish can you be? If possible, I'd like to divorce and remarry Susan. Hearing this, Susan seemed unbothered, merely sighing. It appeared that Steve was the only one caught up in his delusions. Sarah, what will you do? Can you really continue with this foolish son? I have no intention of divorcing. If I divorce, Steve will be the one who ends up happy. I absolutely don't want him to remarry Susan. It's wrong for the one who betrayed to end up happy. But staying in this marriage will only make you unhappy. Look, I have no intention of marrying him. Steve is the one who wants to marry me. I just chose him as a plaything. It's just a fleeting pleasure. In fact, it doesn't have to be Steve. Susan, that's not right. I like the physical chemistry, but I'm not into men who cheat. This situation has turned into such a mess. It's a turn-off. We should just not see each other anymore, right? It's not just about not seeing each other. I'll be demanding alimony from you. Alimony? Why should I pay when I was taking care of your husband while you were away? It's not just about when I was away. Well, it's because you weren't taking care of your husband. That's why I stepped in. Why should I pay alimony for that? Hearing the word alimony, Susan suddenly became combative. If Steve hadn't approached me, none of this would have happened. You should be the ones paying alimony. Besides, I wasn't his only affair. What do you mean? Look at this. You can see how many women he's been contacting. It's like he's going down the line. Ah. Why do you have access to my profile? That was easy. I got your ID and password while you were sleeping. Then it was simple to see how much you've been playing around. You shouldn't show that. But it was too late. We had all seen just how many women Steve had been contacting. What have you been doing, Steve? Have you been doing this since before we were married? Well, yeah. All those late nights at work. How much have you been deceiving me? Really, what a son. Look, that's just how men are. A man without sexual desire is boring. Throughout history, powerful men have had many women. I'm chasing women to become something big. Enough, you idiot! I never thought you could be this foolish. If that's how you feel, then let's get divorced. Susan doesn't want to marry me, but I want to play around with more women. Fine, I'll divorce you. But the child stays with me. I don't need a child. Can't have fun with one around. Really, how far can you go? His parents were dumbfounded, and his father, who had been silent, now yelled in anger. But Steve was defiant, claiming this was his way of life. He was beyond help, a hopeless fool. Just get out. I don't even want to see your face anymore. Leave now. No, that's not possible. I have nowhere to go. I need time to prepare if I'm going to leave. Or is it okay if I go back to my parents' house? Of course not. You fool! Don't even think about coming back here. You're not welcome at home. See? Fine. Then I'll leave. I'll send you the divorce papers later, I said, and then left the house with Steve's parents. The next day, I sent the divorce papers, including a claim for alimony. Steve contacted me soon after. I've filed the divorce papers at the city office. Oh, really? So now we're strangers. Yes, that's right. But why did you send a claim for alimony? Why? Because your infidelity caused the divorce. That's a joke. I have no intention of paying that. What? It's my right. I don't care. If I pay that, I won't have money to enjoy myself with women. What are you talking about? Just speaking plain English. Can't you understand? If you hadn't cheated, none of this would have happened. So what? If you were entirely blameless, maybe I'd understand, but you're not without fault. What fault? The fault of not paying attention to me. His selfish reasoning left me speechless. I angrily hung up and immediately went to see a lawyer. Initially, I only intended to claim alimony, but after hearing his absurd argument, I decided to also demand child support. Steve, not expecting me to hire a lawyer, was so surprised that he agreed to pay a lump sum. He left with a parting shot, "I have a job, so money is no problem." But that wasn't the end of Steve's surprises. A month later, he got a shock. "Hey, I got a notice to pay the rent." "What's this about?" "That's right. Rent is due." "Why am I being charged rent?" "Well, that house was originally mine before we got married. I changed the name to yours after we got married. I didn't know that. I did tell you. But it seemed like you didn't care much about it. I knew your salary wouldn't cover it even after we got married, so I've been paying the rent all this time. It's a costly place, but you liked it, and I loved that house too, so I thought the high rent was worth it. How could you afford such high rent? You know I've been streaming videos, right? I started as a hobby before we were married and it took off. Now I manage about 3 channels. You were doing that? Yeah, my cooking videos get a lot of views. Plus, I write a blog too. Thanks to the ad revenue, I make about $100,000 a month. I'm doing really well, so paying that rent was never an issue. Really? Hey, can we start over? What? Let's get back together. I actually always loved you. I just felt a bit lonely and got distracted by other women. A bit lonely? I don't think someone who contacted so many women even before our marriage was just a bit lonely. You were always active, but... No, really, you were too active. You're like a bean, how persistent you are. Anyway, you can't afford that rent with your salary, so you'll need to move out. That's not fair. Living in that house is part of my status. Status with a low salary? No. I need a big house to attract women. Women don't come to a man with no money. Well, that's true. No money and all brains in the lower half, no one would bother with you. So, let's start over for my sake. That makes no sense. It's all for your benefit. Can't we have that kind of relationship? Absolutely not. Come on, let's start over. Steve kept calling, saying we should get back together because he was behind on rent or had run out of money. His reasoning was so selfish that I made a video about it and posted it online. The comment section exploded with people amazed at such stupidity, and my channel's subscribers skyrocketed. Thanks to you, Steve. I was initially pleased with the turn of events, but the online community didn't stop there. Intrigued by the entertaining story, they began to investigate who my husband was. In no time, internet detectives had exposed Steve's face in photos. Furthermore, they revealed his personal information, including his home and workplace. I was astonished by the efficiency of their work, rivaling that of the police. However, this led to serious consequences for his company. A boycott movement started, urging people not to buy products from a company that employed someone like him. With such pressure, the company had no choice but to act, and as a result, Steve was fired, blamed for the negative impact on the company. Help me! What happened? I got fired. That's to be expected. How did they find out about me? Internet sleuths are as good as professionals. I can't believe it led to a boycott and I was blamed for the company's poor performance and got fired. What should I do? Just get a job. That's all you can do. But I won't make as much as before. It's okay. You weren't making much before anyway. It won't be much different. That's harsh. But true. You were too busy chasing women. Thanks to that, my channel is doing great. What do you mean? After using our story, my viewership and income skyrocketed. It's like all the tears I shed over your cheating were a lie. So, I helped you make more money? That's one way to put it. Then I'll keep giving you material. If I cheat and you make videos about it, it's a win-win. Unfortunately, repeating the same story gets boring. I'm focusing on child-related content now, so don't worry. Hey! What about me? Go to hell. Help me! Steve, having lost his job and income, desperately tried to continue living in the same house by engaging in a rigorous job hunt. However, he lamented that all the offers he received were for less pay than before, and ultimately, he failed to secure a new position. Unable to sustain himself under these circumstances, he moved into a rundown apartment that seemed at least 50 years old. Dissatisfied with this lifestyle, Steve attempted to move in with a woman he met through a dating app, but she refused, not wanting anything to do with a man in such financial straits. He then turned to his parents, hoping for support, but was turned away at the door, paying the price for his foolish actions. Desperate for any kind of employment, Steve faced the challenge of his notoriety. His face was recognized everywhere, making it impossible to keep a job. Eventually, he found work as a night janitor in an office building. Wearing a large mask and working in the dead of night, he led a lonely life, a stark contrast to his previous existence. This was truly a fitting end for a man who had scorned women. As for me, I returned to my parents' home and, with their help, devoted myself to raising my child. I continued to create content around my child, which resulted in an increasing income. I'm even planning to start my own company soon. Thanks to these developments, both my personal and professional lives are thriving. I'm living the happiest days of my life.